just moments before the grandest royal event of the season, as the cameras rolled and the world watched with eager anticipation. Something deeply unsettling unfolded within the glimmering confines of the palace. All eyes were meant to be on the stage, on the legacy being celebrated, on the unity of the monarchy. But instead, they locked onto Princess Anne the stalwart, no-nonsense pillar of the royal family, making a move so subtle yet seismic it sent shockwaves through the global press. With practiced grace and unmistakable finality, Anne shifted her designated seat away from Queen Camilla's. No explanation, no visible confrontation, just a quiet, unyielding refusal that needed no words. It was a snub not lost on anyone, least of all the royal aides, who immediately descended into hushed chaos, whispering urgently as if damage control could be done before the cameras caught on. But they were already too late. The lens had seen everything: Anne's cold posture, her clenched jaw as Camilla neared, and her deliberate choice to keep her distance. Within minutes, headlines were ablaze. Royal rift on display. Princess Anne refuses to sit near Camilla. Tensions explode in public. Social media lit up like wildfire, speculation running rampant as millions dissected every blink and breath caught on tape. Was this mere discomfort or open rebellion? The palace, true to form, declined to comment, issuing the cold silence that only fueled the fire further. Yet the more they tried to ignore it, the more undeniable it became. This wasn't an accident. It was a statement, and the message was heard loud and clear. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Because what appeared to be a spontaneous act of defiance was anything but. It was the eruption of years, no, decades of buried animosity, concealed slights, and carefully maintained distance. This was not just about seating. It was about power, pain, and the unraveling of a relationship that was never meant to thrive. And to truly understand the weight of this moment, we must return to where it all began, into the shadowy corridors of Windsor, where long-held grudges, unspoken betrayals, and a cold war between two of the most formidable women in royal history were quietly taking shape. But to understand why Princess Anne would risk igniting a public spectacle, we must go back deep into years of secrets, simmering tensions, and a betrayal that never truly healed. Behind palace walls, a silent war has been brewing. Though Anne and Camilla often appeared civil in public, sources close to the royals say their relationship was never warm. In fact, it may have been frigid from the start, driven by unspoken grudges, private confrontations, and an early rivalry that never thawed. From the moment Camilla re-entered Charles's life, Anne sensed a shift in unease she couldn't ignore. She had always stood as the fortress of tradition, the keeper of her mother's values, and the embodiment of stoic royal service. Camilla, on the other hand, represented disruption, an unwelcome reminder of scandal, second chances, and rewritten rules. It wasn't just about morality or romance, it was about legacy. Anne, fiercely loyal to the memory of Princess Diana, had never accepted Camilla's presence as anything more than a tolerated necessity. Behind closed doors, she voiced her disdain not with loud accusations, but with icy distance, silences that spoke volumes, and a refusal to play into what she considered a public farce. Things only grew colder after Queen Elizabeth's passing. Camilla's sudden elevation to queen consort was, for Anne, a jarring betrayal of everything their late mother had upheld. That crown, even if symbolic, felt like it had bypassed years of royal service, skipped over those who had bled for the institution. There was no outburst, no confrontation, but Anne's disapproval was unmistakable. The night she reportedly walked out of a private dinner hosted by Camilla wasn't just a social slight, it was a declaration of boundaries. Camilla had tried, insiders claim, to bridge the gap. A private lunch here, a note of apology there. But Anne remained unmoved. She wasn't interested in polite pretenses. Their dynamic evolved, or rather, calcified into what palace aides now describe as cordial but cold. Their interactions were scripted, their smiles hollow, their presence in the same room a masterclass in avoidance. And yet, through all this simmering resentment, the public never saw the full depth of their divide. Until now. Anne's very public refusal to sit beside Camilla wasn't a first crack in their relationship, it was the first time the crack was made visible. The years of restraint had fractured into a moment of unfiltered truth, and the world saw it. Because beneath that composed exterior, behind Anne's dignified silence, lies a pain far more personal, a betrayal not of royal protocol, but of blood, legacy, and family. A betrayal that cuts deeper than any public feud ever could. But the heart of Anne's refusal may go even deeper into a betrayal that cut closer to home than anyone realized. What if Anne's bitterness wasn't just about protocol or personality, but betrayal? A betrayal that didn't involve Anne directly, but someone she fiercely protects. And it's not who you think. New whispers reveal a royal deal gone wrong, where Camilla played a role Anne has never forgiven. For Princess Anne, the monarchy was never just duty, it was blood, sacrifice, and legacy. So when quiet discussions began in early 2025 regarding the possibility of granting her eldest son, Peter Phillips, a long-delayed peerage title, a noble recognition many believed he rightfully deserved, Anne felt a rare flicker of hope. It was meant to be a quiet gesture of respect, a nod to Peter's decades of service and loyalty without the burden of royal titles. Charles at first was reportedly supportive, but something shifted behind closed doors. Meetings were postponed, promises turned vague, and then, just like that, the idea was dead in the water. Rumors pointed squarely to Camilla, whispers that she had strongly advised against the move, calling it unnecessary and problematic for the current royal image. But to Anne, it was sabotage, personal, strategic, and unforgivable. She had watched her children, born without titles, serve the crown quietly and without scandal. And now, when one was finally being considered for recognition, Camilla had inserted herself into a decision that had nothing to do with her. Palace aides say Anne confronted Charles in a rare moment of fury, demanding answers. What followed was a storm of words not meant for polished ears, a confrontation that shook the very foundations of royal civility. Camilla was not present during the clash, but the aftermath was unmistakable. From that moment forward, Anne ceased all private correspondence with Camilla. Her tone, once distant but polite, became ice-cold. Sources claim she made it clear to those around her this was the final line. The damage was irreparable. And while the press remained oblivious, the palace staff felt the shift. The warmth that once barely existed between the two women had now turned to complete frost. Camilla, sensing the depth of the wound, made no further attempts to engage. The silence became its own battlefield, chilling, tense, and laced with unspoken rage. Anne didn't speak of the betrayal publicly. She didn't need to. Every quiet glare, every calculated absence, every withdrawn smile at public events became its own declaration. Those who knew her understood, when Anne withdraws, it means something has broken. And this wasn't just about her son. It was about legacy, about the erasure of her bloodline's contributions in favor of a carefully curated modern monarchy controlled by those who hadn't earned it. Camilla's hand in the decision didn't just cross a line, it decimated it. This wasn't a policy disagreement. This was personal. And while Anne continued to perform her duties with discipline and grace, the fire beneath never cooled. Because in her eyes, Camilla had done the unthinkable. She had tampered with Anne's family. Yet what truly lit the fuse for Anne's public snub may have been a chilling comment Camilla made, one that reopened an old, deeply personal wound. Sometimes, it only takes one sentence to destroy decades of fragile peace. Just weeks before the incident, Queen Camilla reportedly made a biting comment about Anne's role in the monarchy, one that was overheard by the wrong person, and quickly relayed back to Anne. And that single remark shattered what little tolerance remained. During an exclusive gathering at a private royal event, Camilla was overheard describing Anne as too militaristic and out of step with the modern monarchy, allegedly laughing as she dismissed her sister-in-law's strict adherence to duty as outdated and cold. It was the kind of remark meant to remain within the walls of privilege, but it didn't. A royal staffer, one who had long worked alongside Anne, carried the words straight to her. And in that moment, something shifted. The stoic restraint Anne had shown for years finally cracked. According to sources close to the Princess Royal, her response was immediate, searing, "She's forgotten who kept this family afloat when others fell apart." And in that single furious line, Anne revealed the truth behind her enduring silence, a truth wrapped in hurt, sacrifice, and the haunting memory of years when Camilla had yet to earn her place. This wasn't just another catty insult tossed in the shadows of royalty. For Anne, it was a deliberate attempt to erase her legacy. Camilla's words struck at the very core of who Anne had always been, the rock of the family during its darkest chapters, the tireless public servant who had upheld the crown without complaint while others stumbled. To be labeled irrelevant by someone she viewed as a latecomer with no understanding of true sacrifice was more than an insult. It was war. Charles, desperate to avoid further deterioration, attempted to step in. He urged his sister to overlook the remark, calling it a misunderstanding, even suggesting Camilla had spoken out of exhaustion. But Anne wasn't interested in excuses. She had remained silent for too long, and this time, she made it clear she would not be seated beside Camilla at any public event going forward. This wasn't a request. It was a command. Rumors now suggest that the seating snub witnessed by the world had been orchestrated weeks in advance, after that private event lit a fuse that could no longer be hidden behind royal protocol. What Camilla may have viewed as casual mockery, Anne internalized as a declaration of erasure. A rewriting of history where Anne's decades of discipline were repackaged as rigidity, her sacrifices dismissed as relics of a bygone era. In a monarchy already teetering on transformation, it was more than personal, it was a symbolic strike against the very structure Anne had given her life to uphold. Now, the simmering tensions had burst into open flames, and Anne was no longer content to play the quiet soldier. She was taking a stand not just for herself, but for the values and legacy she believes Camilla has tried to overwrite. But this wasn't just about personal pride, there's a strategic power struggle unfolding behind the scenes. And Anne is no longer staying silent. While Camilla enjoys the spotlight, Princess Anne has been building quiet influence. In a palace increasingly split by loyalties, Anne's no-nonsense approach and lifelong dedication to duty have made her a force behind the throne. But with Charles growing weaker and the monarchy facing unprecedented instability, Anne may be positioning herself for something much bigger. As the world focused on Camilla's every public smile and speech, something else was happening behind the velvet curtains, something calculated, quiet, and formidable. Anne, without fanfare, has been tightening her hold on the monarchy's structural core. In military circles, she is revered not merely as a royal, but as a commander, a symbol of grit, history, and honor. Within the Commonwealth, leaders who once deferred to the Queen now turn to Anne for stability, for clarity. They see in her not just seniority, but unwavering strength. And as King Charles scales back under the weight of age and burden, it is Anne, not Camilla, who is being asked to step forward in key state matters, particularly those tied to legacy, diplomacy, and defense. What was once an informal role has become a power channel all its own. Charles has quietly authorized Anne to oversee certain royal responsibilities. And though Camilla remains the queen by title, it is Anne whose signature increasingly appears on decisions that shape the monarchy's internal scaffolding. Allies within the palace refer to her as the iron spine of the crown, a title she neither embraces nor rejects, but one that perfectly captures her role as the monarchy's last unyielding pillar. And perhaps most telling of all, she's forging an unexpected alliance with Prince William. Frustrated by his stepmother's political maneuvering and protective of the monarchy's future under his eventual reign, William has reportedly leaned into Anne's counsel, finding in her a trusted partner who shares his vision for a stripped-back, values-driven royal family. Together, they've formed what some insiders call a quiet coalition, subtly shifting power dynamics without direct confrontation. Behind closed doors, there's growing chatter that Anne is prepared to assume stewardship over key royal charities, many of which Camilla currently presides over. It's not just about titles, it's about influence, purpose, and setting the tone for the next generation of royals. Where Camilla seeks visibility, Anne seeks control. Where Camilla charms the press, Anne shapes the agenda. And in a monarchy that has survived wars, divorces, and scandals, it is not charm that ensures survival, it is control. That's what Anne is after. Not for glory, but for preservation. For the crown, not the camera. She's rising, and she's doing it her way. But as Anne rises in favor, Camilla isn't backing down, and the next chapter could ignite an all-out royal confrontation. Queen Camilla is no stranger to adversity, and she's not letting Anne's silent rebellion go unanswered. In the weeks following the public snub, Camilla's allies in the press began spinning a narrative of their own. But beneath the surface, Camilla was moving pawns in the royal chessboard, and Anne's position may not be as secure as she thinks. Within days, headlines began surfacing with suspiciously aligned tones portraying Anne as cold, unyielding, and out of touch with the modern monarchy. Anonymous quotes from insiders painted a picture of a woman clinging to the past, resistant to change, and difficult to work with. It wasn't just a media assault, it was a calculated reframing of Anne's image. Camilla wasn't confronting Anne directly, she was dismantling her from the outside in. Even more alarming, Camilla was seen in several high-profile appearances with William's children. A rare and deliberate move interpreted by many as a PR tactic meant to signal closeness with the future monarch. It wasn't about family, it was about optics. And Camilla knew exactly how to wield them. Privately, palace staff whispered about strategic conversations taking place behind locked doors. Rumors circulated that Camilla was quietly urging Charles to sideline Anne from any meaningful role in succession planning. While Charles publicly maintained a neutral stance, those closest to him noted a subtle but noticeable shift in how Anne's proposals were received: delayed, redirected, or quietly dismissed. Then came the most damning move, a conveniently timed leak alleging that Anne had lost her temper with a senior advisor, reportedly shouting over a minor disagreement about royal protocol. The story was picked up instantly, with tabloids framing it as proof that Anne was becoming unstable and unfit for greater responsibility. Those who knew her dismissed it as exaggerated nonsense, but perception, in the royal family, often outweighs truth. And just as quickly as the smear campaign began, internal reshuffling followed. Two of Anne's most trusted aides were quietly reassigned to different departments without notice, without explanation. Another was placed on indefinite leave. No direct links were drawn to Camilla, but few in the palace doubted where the orders originated. Former staffers now whisper that Camilla has begun cleaning house, asserting control through quiet, bureaucratic power plays that don't leave fingerprints. Her style isn't loud, it's surgical. She eliminates threat not with confrontation, but with erasure. In her world, silence is a weapon. And Anne, for all her strength, was being outmaneuvered not with titles or speeches, but with whispers, edits, and vanishing allies. The war wasn't just being fought in public, it was being won behind the scenes. And just when it seemed like the feud had reached its peak, a private letter was leaked, turning everything on its head. One letter. That's all it took to shift public sympathy and expose a royal truth no one was prepared to face. The leak came from an anonymous source, but its contents? Undeniable. In a deeply emotional letter, Anne wrote what she could never say publicly, and suddenly, the nation saw the royal rift with new eyes. It wasn't addressed to the public, or even to Camilla, but to a close confidante someone trusted, someone inside the palace. And yet, there it was, printed in full on the front page of a Sunday morning tabloid, its words raw, searing, and heartbreakingly honest. Anne spoke of a monarchy she no longer recognized, a monarchy where years of service, loyalty, and quiet sacrifice meant nothing in the face of modern popularity and political theater. She expressed the quiet agony of watching Camilla, once regarded with hesitation, now sitting on a throne once guarded by their mother, a throne Anne never wanted for herself, but one she believed should have been respected more deeply. The letter didn't accuse, it revealed. It peeled back the stoic exterior of the Princess Royal to expose something rare: wounded dignity. She described feeling sidelined after Queen Elizabeth's death, not just by the institution, but by her own brother. She questioned how, after all she had done to uphold the monarchy, she was suddenly treated as a ceremonial afterthought while Camilla was vaulted into prominence. There was a moment in the letter that struck the public with a force no speech ever could. Anne wrote, "I was not looking to be celebrated, only acknowledged. Not for glory, but for the years I held this family steady when others fell away." It was more than frustration. It was grief, not just for her mother, but for the monarchy that had changed beneath her feet, and not for the better. She even touched upon her children, voicing the heartbreak of seeing their contributions dismissed, their names absent from conversations of legacy and future. It wasn't entitlement, it was truth. The public's reaction was instant. Social media flooded with tributes, apologies, and calls of support for a woman long seen as unshakable. For the first time, people saw beyond Anne's rigid fade, and witnessed a royal who had bled quietly for an institution that had in turn made her invisible. Even her critics were silenced. The narrative Camilla's team had built, a cold, outdated woman resistant to progress, crumbled overnight. Suddenly, the villain in the shadows looked more like the victim. But within the palace walls, the atmosphere was anything but sympathetic. Whispers of betrayal, demands to find the source of the leak, and mounting tension swirled like a storm. Anne had never wanted this to be public, but now that it was, there was no turning back. She had exposed not only her pain, but the fault lines no one dared acknowledge. The war was no longer private. But if you think this letter ended the war between Anne and Camilla, you couldn't be more wrong. It only deepened the divide. Behind palace gates, the royal family is tearing at the seams. What once seemed like a stable institution is now riddled with private resentment, public missteps, and fractured loyalties. And in the center of it all, two women locked in a cold war that threatens to redefine the very fabric of the monarchy. The tension is no longer subtle. It ripples through corridors and casts shadows over every ceremonial smile. King Charles, aging and increasingly fatigued, finds himself pulled in opposite directions, bound by loyalty to his wife Camilla and tethered to a lifetime of shared history with his sister Anne. But his silence has only widened the divide. What he calls diplomacy, others call indecision. And as the monarch tiptoes between two powerful forces, his indecisiveness begins to corrode the very leadership he's sworn to uphold. William, too, is reaching a breaking point. Once content to remain neutral, he now watches the feuding with weary eyes, aware that it's not just a family matter anymore, it's a threat to the institution he will one day inherit. Privately, he has urged both women to take a step back, to reassess. But neither Anne nor Camilla shows any sign of retreating. Their feud has now crept into every facet of royal operations. All joint engagements between the Queen Consort and the Princess Royal have been quietly cancelled, with aides citing scheduling conflicts no one believes. The palace calendar, once a symbol of unity, is now a tactical blueprint designed to avoid explosions. At Balmoral, where peace was once found in its remoteness, staff now describe the atmosphere as unbearable tense, hushed, and anxious. Servants speak in low tones. Doors close faster. Even seasoned royal aides admit they've never seen the family like this. Behind the gilded walls, the royal machine continues to function, but the heartbeat is erratic. And outside, the cracks are starting to show. Public perception of the royal family has plummeted to new lows, with polls revealing dwindling trust and growing calls for transparency. The once revered mystique of the monarchy is now being devoured by whispers of dysfunction and betrayal. The people aren't just questioning Camilla or Anne, they're beginning to question the entire institution. But perhaps the most shocking tremor has yet to come. Rumors are swirling loudly now of a potential televised interview. Not from a disgraced prince, but from Princess Anne herself. The woman once considered the silent sentinel of the monarchy may be preparing to break that silence in the most public way imaginable. Sources suggest discussions have taken place with trusted media contacts, and while nothing is confirmed, the possibility alone is sending shivers through the palace. If Anne speaks, she won't just speak as a sister wronged. She will speak as a soldier of the crown with decades of unfiltered truth, and that may prove more dangerous than any scandal the monarchy has yet faced. And now, with one final twist on the horizon, the monarchy is bracing for a moment that could shatter its already fragile unity. Princess Anne isn't done. Sources confirm she's preparing for a bold step that could send shockwaves through the monarchy. Whether it's a public address, a memoir, or stepping back entirely, one thing is clear: Anne has had enough. And Camilla? She may finally face the reckoning she never saw coming. The walls of the palace are trembling with whispers that Anne has sought legal counsel not to file suit, but to protect herself. The rumor? A tell-all. Something powerful. Something irreversible. It wouldn't be a vengeful outburst, but a deliberate, calculated exposure of what Anne has endured and what the monarchy has buried. Even without official confirmation, the speculation has sent the palace into quiet panic. Lawyers have been seen coming and going from discreet entrances. Communications teams are said to be drawing up contingency plans. And Charles? He's increasingly alone in his attempts to maintain unity. The king's once steady grasp on the family is slipping between the fault lines of loyalty, silence, and legacy. What's even more telling are Anne's actions behind the scenes. In meetings once filled with formality, she has begun questioning her involvement in traditional royal duties. She's reportedly in talks about shifting her patronages away from the crown's portfolio and into independent hands charities she's supported for decades now being considered for private stewardship. It's a quiet revolution, but a revolutionary act nonetheless. If Anne severs her role publicly, it would strike at the heart of the monarchy's moral foundation, the daughter of the late queen walking away, not in scandal but in protest. During a recent speech, Anne dropped a line that left everyone in the room frozen. Truth, even in silence, finds its voice. No elaboration. No context. But to those paying attention, it was a loaded signal, a warning that her silence may soon give way to revelation. Camilla, behind her composed exterior, is said to be shaken. Multiple sources say she has expressed concern not just privately to Charles, but to advisors. The fear isn't just about image, it's about control. If Anne speaks, Camilla's carefully crafted narrative begins to fracture. If Anne withdraws, the foundation of the united front collapses. And in the midst of it all, Charles has become more isolated than ever. His role as monarch is being tested not by Parliament nor by public protest, but by the implosion of the family he's supposed to lead. The quiet dinners have turned into awkward silences. The family gatherings now occur with precision scheduling to ensure Anne and Camilla never meet. Every move is being watched, dissected, anticipated. Within the palace, senior aides are reportedly bracing for impact. One insider confided, "If she goes public, there's no turning back. The monarchy won't be the same. It's not a matter of if anymore, it's when." Anne has always been the unshakable core, the embodiment of resilience and tradition. But now, she may become something else entirely, the royal, who stood up, spoke out, and changed everything. As the royal silence grows louder, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: this war between Anne and Camilla isn't just personal. It may change the monarchy forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.